request that you had was to talk to culinary grads who have been through Capstone, and look, they're still alive. They've gone on to lead productive lives, right? So I'm going to let them introduce themselves. I think what we may do is just to kind of start, Jason, tell them which culinary theme was, and kind of just give a little bit of a recap. And we'll go through and, kind of talk about your experiences. And then we're going to open it up to questions. Because not that much has changed. It's only been 2 years,
1 year
years?
for me.
1 year? Anyway, not so long ago. It's pretty similar to what, what they did is pretty similar to what you guys are doing. So, all right, let's do this.
Do you want to do just the introduction?
Just introduce yourself, say what your Capstone theme was, and maybe give just a recap of what you remember and what you'd like to try and forget.
I'm Jason Gray. Graduated last May. For my Capstone, I did classical French. I originally had thought about doing something else, but I got a little confused of when everything was due, and I thought I had to have my full menu and requisition when I came back for the beginning of spring, and which wasn't the case, but I was ready. I was ahead of the ball game. Things I remember, if Chef Orton and Chef Boer hadn't already told you, you're not creating anything new. What you're going to do during Capstone is demonstrate the fundamentals that you've learned. If you do something fancy and you got time to do it, great, but they're not judging you on taking it to the next level. Being focused, especially on your prep days, and proper planning ahead. I know Abby knows about it, but during prep week, I missed all of Tuesday because I had to go to the hospital. So you've got plenty of time to do it. Just when you're in there doing your prep during prep week, don't worry about chatting with your friend next to you the whole time. Stay focused on what you're doing. Get as much of your prep done so when Thursday cook day comes, you're pretty much taking it easy and doing maybe you're finishing your dessert or something, and then just cooking everything as the dishes come up. And then just staying organized. I think my organization is probably the thing I took the biggest hit on. Just my cooler, I was in the middle, so I didn't have a speed rack right beside me. So my cooler got a bit disorganized, and then that cost me time as it got further into the production that night. So just stay organized as much as possible. Don't keep anything on the station that you don't need there. Try to utilize the walk-in coolers or the reach-in coolers as much as possible, and keep the stuff in your low boy that's used for plating up. Really nothing that I care to forget except for that day at the hospital. But everything went good. You've got a great support team around you. Use them. And then if you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer them.
I'm Joshua Waters. My Capstone was 3 years ago, and I did Central African. And kind of like what Jason said, you're really just creating a dish that's fundamental to you and what you are used to. You don't have to go crazy, because I did that. And I was trying to make everything super elaborate and planned out, but you realize how many hiccups happen during Capstone, whether it's misordering, which I did a couple times. I forgot to order. I had to make a chicken stock and I forgot to order the bones. So it was a veg stock that day, but nobody had to know. And really planning out everything that you want to do, because during that time frame, I was getting to understand organization, but I wasn't really organized with my lab plans or with how I wanted everything to come out or be prepped. So everything was a little bit all over the place at that time. But what I learned with baking was being so laid out and ready. It's like each thing you miss out is already there. All you have to do is combine it. So really understanding what each dish needs and what will save you time in the long term. Because you get three days of prep?
3 days and then the actual cook day.
Yeah, 3 days of prep, and like Jason said, I knocked out dessert early. That was like my very first day, because dessert was my weakness at the time, and I saved more of the more aggressive things I knew were time sensitive more for that day. So it's just learning what needs to be prepped and at what given time.
I'm Ariel Jones. My capstone was 2 years ago in 2022, and I did the UK as my theme. I also did my dessert pretty early in the process. I think that was so nice, especially being mostly a like savory chef. Pastry is not my like strong suit, and so having time to like maybe mess up something was necessary for me to be like, okay, my mousse did not set. Now I get to remake it on the next day instead of trying to make it work last minute at Capstone. And then also during Capstone Day, you get to literally like either unmold it or just like put it on a plate, and then you don't have to do anything for that course, and that's so nice. I definitely misordered a few items, but it's also important to like know your recipes. Chef Boer like doesn't love rosemary and thyme as much as I do, and I knew that for my recipes it was so necessary for me to have literally an ounce of rosemary and thyme, if not more, on my rec sheet. And multiple times he was like, you don't need that much, and I was like, I do. And on my Capstone Day I used every little bit of it, and it was totally necessary. So absolutely take the chef's opinions and feedback so like in depth. And then also when you are tasting your recipes and when you get your classmates to taste your recipes, because it's important to get more than one person's feedback on it, make sure that you feel confident in the thing that you're delivering in your own style too. Don't try to make things way too flashy. I made these like tiny little potato Palm Anna things, and they totally did not turn out on the day of Capstone, and I made them like 4 times, and they hadn't turned out any time during like all of our practice days either, and like throughout the weeks when you're recipe testing. And I was like, they're gonna turn out this day, that's for sure. They did not. So have a backup plan in mind and be able to think on your toes. And take all of the weeks leading up to Capstone, just like really develop each recipe, think through it every step of the way. By the time you're doing Capstone, you've made that recipe like at least 3 or 4 times. You're gonna do it, and it's gonna be like second nature at that point if you've really written out your recipes, your timelines, your prep lists, you know exactly what you need for each dish. On Capstone Day, just like step back for a second, look at everything very like objectively and be like, great, I have these things here, organization is key. And when you get flustered, I literally like took a step away and went and I sat in the hallway for a second because there was a plate debacle and nobody had the right plates. And I went outside and took a breath, and I was like, it's really not that big of a deal if it's on a square plate or a round plate. And I went back in and I had put it on a round plate, and that's okay. You know, all the little things, they feel really, really, really important, but they're only judging you on knowing what the foundations of what you learned is. The plate that you put it on counts a little bit, but it doesn't count as much as you think it does. I wouldn't forget anything also.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, every bit that I've learned the entire time I've went through this program, I use every bit of it every day at my job. So I wouldn't forget any of it.
Offer up your portfolio if somebody would like to look at it as we continue.
I brought my professional portfolio and also my judges packet thing that you have to like give to them. If you want to see it, you're welcome to. I'll give it to Chef Horton and she can pass them as necessary. Thank you.
So, running theme, guys. Remember we talked early about not creating something that no man has ever seen before? This is not the time to do that. And to Ariel's point where she goes like, okay, these potatoes have not worked 4 times, but they're gonna work that day. That's not the time you want to count on something to miraculously do a 180. It's really, talk about the stress. Talk about the stress of that week if you guys would for just a minute.
Well, I think that's one of the reasons I went to the hospital. It's just, I had a long weekend of work, because I had just been promoted at work, and so I was working all weekend. When I wasn't working, I was staying up late, finishing packet, and that's one thing, don't wait till the last minute, because that's what would stress you out more. And it was stressful, and some of it was unnecessary stress, because like I said, I missed a whole day and I still got everything done. And it's just one of those things, just being prepared, both mentally and having everything, all your recipes, all your notes in order, adjusting your times, like when you do your different practices on Wednesdays or whatever day y'all do them, make notes of times, because I had my lab plan, and most time during the practices, I was going over that time, so just know that. And then there are certain things that you're only practicing, like for me, I practiced my cake twice at school, I made it once or twice at home that I did for my dessert. But other things like my consomme, a lot of times my salad, the cracker that I use, I was making that every time I did a production. I didn't try to come up with something fancy for the production. If I could fix something during that production that was part of my capstone, I was doing it just to get more practice.
Yeah, I agree with Jason. Every time I had a chance during production, I was making my orange thyme vinaigrette and my seeded cracker for every salad I could possibly put it on. And by the time my salad came, I didn't even think about my salad. I was like, it's fine. My salad is gonna be my salad. And I never really had to think about it again. I think Capstone Week was incredibly stressful, and I also agree that maybe I stressed myself out too much about it. Like, it wasn't totally necessary. I forgot to pour the wine for my Capstone partner's fish course. Oh my goodness, I was so anxiety ridden. I was like, I've ruined his grade. He's going to fail because I forgot to pour the wine for his fish course. And that's not how that works, first off. And I think the more you're stressed out, the more things you forget. So the more that you can calm yourself down and reel it back in, the more you're going to be on point and hitting all your notes that you're supposed to.
Yeah, Capstone Week was one of the most stressful times. I was also working full time and going to work right after I got out of prep that day, and then would stay up till 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, finishing packing and lab plans.
Yeah.
Again, the whole time I was doing that culinary capstone, I was behind, and it really is coming from overworking yourself, under preparing, and really taking things seriously, but also I've done this so many times. There's still a lot of factors that go into it, and that's one thing I would say is try to minimize the amount of work you do during that week, or get as far ahead as you can. Say if your capstone's in 6 weeks, week 3, you're 3 weeks in, you should already have your packets and everything ready to go, so you can that's one less thing to worry about.
If you had the luxury of asking for that week off from work, would you have done it?
Oh yeah.
I tried to ask for that week off from work. I too was recently promoted to assistant general manager, and that was not an option, and I was very, very upset about it. But if I had the luxury to ask for that week totally off, I would have. I do think that I asked for 3 days off, which is one more day than I normally would probably get. So that was nice. But if I could ask for the entire week off, I totally would do it. But it's hard in this industry to ask for all that time off sometimes.
Yeah, but just the luxury of it would have been great, huh?
Oh yeah.
Now, what questions do we have? I know you've got them, so let's just, anybody that's got questions, now's the time.
Well, another stuff we always talked about having kind of an emergency kit and stuff, because you have to wreck everything down to grams of any spice you want. So what's something that you'd recommend, essentials for the kid, or something you're like, damn, I wish I had that, but I just wasn't even thinking about it.
Your consomme stuff for sure.
Especially having stuff, and remembering that when you're separating your eggs, a lot of times during class, you just toss your eggshells. Save them, because if your consommé breaks, is one of the things that helps save it. Just remembering stuff like that. Because I think I used within a quarter of my budget, and I ended up having a lot of extra, and that's one of the things, unlike Ariel, I thought I needed, especially a lot of the herbs and stuff, I thought I needed that much, but when, at the end of my capstone, I had more than I should have left over. But I also didn't run out. So for me, after I had went through and did my requisition for the minimum and maybe slightly more than things that I thought I may run into issues like milk or cream, I went back and added more of those or more butter to clarify and stuff like that. Those are the things that I did. Usually salt's not an issue. Most times you got more salt than you need. Same thing with pepper. But butter and milk and cream were three of the big ones for me that I got extra of, because I knew, I did a mousse. I just want to make sure I had enough for that. I think I did a whipped cream as well, and I just want to make sure I had enough of the stuff for that in case I messed up.
For me personally, I agree with Jason with the dairy. I also made sure I had vinegar in my emergency kit, because if something needs a little bit of acidity, either vinegar or fresh lemon lime will always brighten the dish up. And for me, I was doing a lot of pickling, so I would always have that liquid left over, so I cross-utilized that. And being mindful of trim, like Jason said, being mindful of the trim. I use collard greens, and I didn't know how to use the stems at the time, but now going back, you can pickle them, you can turn them into a mousse, relish, chimichurri. There's so many cross utilizations for parts of produce that we don't really think about. So that was one of the things, even looking back and understanding now.
And somebody's got an African theme this year, don't they? Yeah. So, that's good advice to think about trying to utilize. Floor judging. Talk about that a little bit. What do you remember about floor judging?
Okay, so
My floor judge, Chef Brewer, was mean to me and gave me one of AV Tech's winning competition people as my floor judge. So the entire time, that was also him. I was on the hot food team at the time. That was also his way of trying to take away my nervousness and my anxiety when it comes to social atmospheres. So my judge was a hawk and watched every last thing I did. If there was a crumb on the table, she was like, "Did you see that crumb?" Start pointing things out. Like, I really think I was being a little bit bullied at the time, but looking at it, she was being helpful and helping me see things that I didn't really perceive at the time. Even though I was trying to move my steps to being a clean and organized chef, there were still little loose ends that she helped kind of tie up. And talk to your floor judge, because they have a wealth of experience. Mine, she had competition. She was running Black Balsam at the time. I think she's still up there, and she was just really adamant about, well, if you need help, talk to me, and I can give you some ideas of how to fix, elevate, or even just move forward.
I think that I had a new floor judge. She was very great, and she pointed out a lot of little things that I didn't notice, but she also wasn't very nitpicky. I don't think that I remember receiving any feedback where I was like, oh goodness, the crumb on the table. I did get a lot of positive feedback on the way that I talked to my commis. Be nice, be respectful, and lean on their talents where you might not have them. My commis had a great knack for plating, so I was actively always asking her advice, like, should I do it like this or like this? What would you do? And trying to give her tasks that I obviously this is your capstone, so take lead, but it's important to know how to lead someone and how to ask for advice. It's like the best thing about a strong leader is being able to ask for help. So I was able to lead on her in a different way, and I think my floor judge really saw that. My floor judge also saw when my potatoes didn't turn out and what I did instead, and complimented me on the way I was able to turn all these things that floated away in clarified butter, and I put them all together and I kind of whipped them into a mashed potato thing, and I put that on the plate instead. So she was able to compliment the things that she saw, and I thought that was really useful. She was in and out of my coolers consistently, checking temperatures, making sure my storage levels were good, and like making sure I was doing floor sweeps and stuff, and I wasn't being incredibly messy. But if you are like a 9 out of 10 clean person, and you are nice to your commis, and you take people's feedback and really listen, then you're gonna have a pretty decent floor score.
Mine wasn't overly picky either, but like she said, one of the things is know that they're gonna probably look in your cooler, like near the end of it. My cooler got disorganized, so I put some eggs or liquid egg back in there, but I didn't put it on the bottom. And and she went in there and looked again. I was like, dang, she's already been here once, when she comes back for it again. Just know that they will look multiple times. And also I was complimented on working well with my co-B. And then for the tasting part, one of the things that I stressed out a little bit during it is when I did my bread, I got busy and my bread overproofed. I did brioche knots, and instead of being these nice little cute little things, I mean they were huge, and I was just so stressed out because also my tasting judge was that was his specialty, was French cooking, but then when I talked to him, he's like, I was having everybody taste it because it tasted so good. I'm like, okay. That made me happy, and it's one of the things that I was stressing out during that time, and it probably affected me a little bit, but in the end, it was one of the things that he loved the most. So, it is what it is. Keep going. You've got another course to come.
One thing I did with my floor judge that bounces off of what he had said is I gave my floor judge little things to taste if I had a little extra. And my floor judge didn't eat fish, or there was some sort of like dietary restriction. So I had other floor judges taste it. I had Michelle Bailey taste some stuff. I had Stephen Goss taste some stuff. I had some other floor judges from the other side of the room taste some things. And they always were like, yeah, more salt. Or they gave me like a one note little like thing to change about it. So not like coaching you through your dish, but they will give you like a little blip of feedback if that's what you need in the moment. It also is just like nice. And then you get to talk to these people that maybe you won't get to talk to in a while, or you get to start building connections with people in the community, and that's also a really cool thing.
They really are here to support you. They want, this like next generation thing. They want to see you succeed. And that's a big deal. Yeah, they're not here to annihilate you. And if they are, then I take them down. Yep, well, that's a tough one. Yeah, that's a tough one, yeah. All right, so I have two other things I want you guys to make sure you hit on. Number one, my area, the whole front of the house thing and how that all worked for you. But then also, I definitely want you guys to spend some time on the judging at the end, where the food judging and how that all rolled out for you. So take the easy one first. What do you remember about the dining room setup, linens? What would you have done differently? What do you remember about that?
All mine that I can remember, I did it for Roman, and everything went really well. I was nervous because he was doing souffles for his dessert, and I did get help with that, so that actually went very well. But just take what you learn as you do service work for productions, and just be really focused on that, because it pays off more than what you know. this winter I did candlelight dinner at the Stable Cafe. First time I've ever worked professionally as a server, and nobody believed it was my first time. And it was just all from the training that we did here, and just, you know, as a customer, you know, how do I want somebody to treat me if they're waiting on me? And between those two, you know, it was a very easy transition for me to go over there and work during the day. It was very casual, but I also did the night where it was a 4-course meal, and just, they're not doing it to be mean to you. They're teaching you skills that's going to be of value down the road.
I do agree with that, because a lot of the skills you learn with even communicating in front of houses, it's a silent kind of communication, but it's still really important to be aware of your surroundings and who you're working with to take it to a table. I had my buddy Michael as my partner, and really communicating how they envision the table, because they make a detailed layout, but you still want to clarify, like, is this what you want, and it's just how you imagined it. Because most of the time the chefs that day don't really get a chance to look at the table, so if you can get a quick second where they're not too busy, and like, is this how you would like your table, and really just communicate with them, the night will be smooth, because yeah, you practice how to serve the whole year, so it's just really going into one more service, really.
I agree with that. Front of house is not my strong suit. I'm a little bit socially awkward, and I'm also pretty dyslexic, which in that type of service is really difficult. But even if you forget to pour the wine for your partner's fish course, everything's gonna be okay. I went back and I offered them, I was like, this is the white that should have been paired with the fish course. Would you like a sampling of it, or would you like to move on to the next course? And then they let me know. It's super important to stay in communication with your partner and with your table, and notice how they're coursing out meals, so that way you can let your chef know, like, hey, can you fire in 15 minutes? Or can you fire in 2 minutes? Or like, hey, they just absolutely housed the first course, go ahead and do the next one. And as you go through dinner, people tend to slow down a lot more anyway, so noticing the natural pacing of like what your table is doing is really important, because having your table be empty with no food on it for an extended period of time, that impacts the guest experience. So being able to fill that in with pouring wine, or talking to your table a little bit about the program and what you've done, or if you notice that your chef has fired something and they are not ready for it, seeing what you can do to kind of like get the food out where it's still going to be good, or where the chef doesn't have to refire anything. I've also been complimented and used all of my front of house skills in my day-to-day job. My employer, whenever we do tastings with clients and stuff, because I do a lot of wedding things now, is always like, you are so good in front of guests, and is always astounded by like the level of professionalism and feedback and all these things that I can take from people. And I definitely think that 98% of that came from my training here and what I've learned. So you take it all with you, so even if it's really hard, you need it.
It makes my heart just go, oh my. So talk about tasting judges. What do you remember from that?
I was told that I was given an especially hard, similar to Josh, I was given a particularly difficult tasting judge. Maybe that's why I had a very nice floor judge. It went good. I wish that I had more critical feedback. I think that I'm the person that I've spent so long and I've thought so hard about this entire process, that when I go into the tasting room and I want my chef to be like, this needed a pinch more salt, this needed this needed this. And I think the feedback that I personally got was like, it was good. And I was like, great, what was good about it? And she was like, it was good. And then when I got my score, it didn't match what she had said, and that was hard because I didn't know where the feedback was like coming. I didn't know how to change things. So I wish I had a little bit more out of my tasting room experience. I did get particularly like narrowed in on my bread, which I thought was a very interesting thing to narrow in on when I have all of these crazy things that are much more significant than maybe the accompaniment to my soup. So I think I got a lot of points knocked off for my bread because I made a baguette, and she told me I should have just made a soft roll. And I don't think that that matched, but overall I think that helped me learn more about specific questions to ask people for feedback, and I implement that in my tastings day to day. I'm like, great, and for the salt level on this dish, would you like a little bit more, a little bit less? Would you change the heat level? And I'm able to ask more specific questions instead of just taking, oh, it's good as the answer, because I always want things to be great for my clients.
I do agree with Ariel on that aspect of asking specific questions, because my tasting judge, he was a little harder, but he was more lax than my floor judge. And the biggest thing I remember that made me happy that night was I did pork belly, and he sent back one of the servers and was just like, tell that kid, whoever made the pork belly, that was the best pork belly I've ever had in my life. And I was like, well, that just shined gray on this stressful day. Like, understanding that they're people and they enjoy food and they love to see the progress of a student. And that's just the biggest takeaway from it. They're not there to grill you or tell you your food's bad. They're there to literally help you narrow in your pathway and help you walk down a little bit easier.
I don't remember a lot of specifics about mine other than what he was telling me about how he loved bread so much. But he did touch on different things like salt levels or acid levels on certain dishes. At that point, I was just so overwhelmed and glad to be done. I didn't ask a lot of questions and just listened to Ariel and Josh. Like, maybe I should have asked him a little bit more, especially since French food is his specialty, and I could have gleaned a little bit more to help me down the road. But overall, it was positive. I think for my tasting, I ended up with an A, and the floor score I got a B. So I was really happy, especially after the week I'd already had. I was just happy to be done.
Yeah, I think at the end I was so tired that I forgot to ask more pinpointed questions, and you were in the room with somebody who is like, I asked Chef Boer about being a floor judge and like what that takes, and there's like really a process of choosing people who are very qualified and very strong in this industry to be floor judges, and even above that, tasting judges. So when you're in the room with your tasting judge, like, try to remember to ask a few more questions than you might. Don't like pester them for maybe over an hour because you're tired and they're tired. But if you have a few specific questions that you really want to ask about your menu and how you could have made a specific dish better, try to like remember those like 2 or 3 questions and ask those. I think that would be really great advice.
What's your stress levels like versus like classical productions? Because I mean, classical, it's 2 less courses, but 3 less days. So like, how does it, when you did classical every, not every week, but every other week?
You don't have the floor judge there asking questions, and it's, they're there, but you've also got the other floor judges that are moving around you as well. You've got other chefs that are walking into the kitchen, interacting with you, and just part of it is just the amount of ingredients that I dealt with that day and that week was significantly more than what you do for a production.
I think that it feels like being on stage. So,
Yeah,
go ahead.
and unlike production, you don't have Chef Boer to ask a question. Hey chef, this isn't going right, how do I correct it? So it's all on you and your co-me, if they're knowledgeable of what you're trying to do.
Yeah, it feels like being on stage. So if you get a little bit of stage fright, that's gonna be there. Because you do have so many people, even if they're not like particularly looking at you, like I did have other floor judges like come by my station and be like, hey, get that thing. Or, because if they see it, they're gonna give you that feedback, and that's what makes it such an incredible learning experience. but it's also like being followed around by the health inspector who also knows everything about a dish that you're trying to create. So it's stressful in the environment way. The things that you are making should feel like the back of your hand at that point, but I think that the environment makes it incredibly more stressful. So just like, if you can talk yourself into believing that this is just like a production that you do every other day, then you'll be in good shape.
Like, did you feel like you had more than enough time, or like kind of that kind of level? Like, are you like,
You have definitely have way more than enough time than you expect, because you get in at first thing in the morning and your service is until about 5 o'clock in the afternoon. You got over 8 hours to get prepped up if you're missing anything. It really comes into the organization, because even in classical, you have a lot of things to do, but you kind of had the layout printed out for you. Chef Boer does a demo, he shows you how to make it, and then you put your little spins and takes on it. Capstone is kind of like what Jason and Ariel said, it's you on your own trying to get your image out there for what you want to present to people. Because yes, they've seen it, but not everybody's seen everything that you're preparing.
And just staying focused, really focus that week on what you're doing prep-wise. You know, it's so easy to start talking to your friend next to you. And I don't know if I've ever seen anybody that can stand there and work as fast as they can, just being focused versus working and talking to somebody. Because when you're talking, you've got concentration going there, so you're being more careful with your knife cuts and stuff. And so you want to be slower than if you just go in and focus on what you have to do, and minimize the talking that doesn't have to do with your actual production.
I have to say that I think it varies from class to class, but when I am from week to week too, because your class is kind of divided into 2 weeks, but in my week, I don't think anybody talked to anybody for the first 6 hours. I don't think anybody, like, we may have said good morning, but none of us like looked up from what we were doing. We were all so incredibly concentrated. Nobody talked to anybody. And that's not like being rude. You're just really focused. And I think it's really important to like get into that zone, especially if you like just love cooking and you love food so much. When you're doing it, you kind of get into that like cool flow state where you're just putting stuff together and you're excited about it anyway, and then you're not talking to people anyway. At least that's how it feels for me. If I'm cooking at home in my kitchen, I just get really excited. Bring that energy to it, because that shows, you know? And in my first like 2 prep days, I think I spent nearly 6 hours making the perfect brunoise and the perfect little juliennes and the perfect little cutouts of all these things, so that way whenever I was assembling things later on, like, I didn't have to do the very incredibly detailed things. Also, if I cut myself, I could deal with that earlier in the week rather than like day of. So I tried to get all of the like intricate knife things out of the way, because on the day of you have so much nervous energy. I find that my knife skills are way worse if I'm so nervous anyway. So.
Yeah, and definitely any garnishes that you can prep, but at least by Wednesday that will hold over until production on Thursday. Do that. That was one of the things. A couple of my dishes, I was chopping up herbs just before the plate was going out. You know, and the floor judge made a comment about it, and you know, I tried to get some pity. Say, hey, I did miss a day. That's why some of the stuff hasn't been done yet. But it also, if you've got it prepped, then you can have it staged, and you don't forget anything on your dish. And then, if you can, one of the things I did that week. Prior to, you know, even anytime close to production, I went out and I bought my own 8-ounce pint cups, quart deli cups. I also got the 2 and 4-ounce little cups. So that way, when I was prepping all my garnishes, they were in smaller containers and I could keep them all together versus having a bunch of cup containers or pint containers. It just helps you be more organized.
What other questions can you think of? This is great information, guys. I see a lot of you taking notes, and it will really help you. that I've noticed sometimes where you think you have more time than you do, particularly as you're rolling toward that final, the 5 o'clock start thing. And then all of a sudden the panic starts to come in.
Yeah. I do a lot, because I do banquet service style serving things now. I feel like the way that I prepped for Capstone is very, very similar to the way I prep for events that I do 3 or 4 times a week now. Not now because it's slow, but there's always that like weird 30 minutes before service where you're like, I think I've done everything I can. I think this is it, I'm good. And then you get to service and there's one thing that you totally forgot about, or there's one thing that turns out not the way that you hoped it would, and then you have to figure out what to do and how to fix it. So when you have that, like, I think that's when I stepped out to take a breather and like get myself together about the plate situation, because I knew that I felt like I had about 30 minutes, and I went and I looked at my table. I made sure that my table setup was the way that I wanted it. I came in, I counted my plates, I checked my cooler. If I was ever stressed out, I reorganized my cooler. Like, I took a second and I redid my cooler. So that way, when I came out of the moment of being really stressed out, I looked at my cooler, I knew where everything was. And I was like, great. So this is first course, this is second course, this is third course. And I saved all the little scraps from each course. I would save a little bit, just in case I needed that ingredient to fix a mistake on the next course. So I saved those things.
Yeah, this might be kind of like nitpicky, but like in the cooler, for example, like I like to have each shelf be a different course, whatever. Like, but when it comes to like, health department stuff, like, okay, maybe I have like both my app and my entree have meat on it, or maybe I have eggs for my app, but like I need my app to go on the top shelf instead of here. So like, how do you stay organized when you need to have certain things on different levels? Or how did you set up your coolers? How did you manage to like organize by recipe, but also organize by health code or whatever?
I just one sort of the same idea, but you do have to separate the proteins, and just knowing that your proteins for a course is going to be usually on the lower side along with your egg products, but everything else I tried to keep organized. And for me, instead of using a full like a half hotel, so I try to use smaller pans to where I was putting just the containers for that one dish together. That way I can pour that one, whether it's a half pan or a third pan, I can just pour that out and know that, okay, this also gets the protein, so I get the protein from down below.
With mine, I did the same thing. I kind of did third pans and had everything lined up in there, and had about the cup size deli containers for most of my stuff. And when it came to separate proteins on my labels, I would put like chicken for first course or for third course, just so it's like I know what course that goes to, and at least it's accounted for in the cooler.
I did the exact same thing. I did third pans and I put about cup-sized delis for most of my things in there, and I also labeled all my proteins like first course chicken, second course lamb, or whatever. So that way it was easily. I know one time I walked in the kitchen and Chef Brewer had everything with like different colored markers. You could do that too, if you wanted to, but my brain doesn't register that as quickly as just like reading first course. So there's different methods of doing it, but it really just comes down to all your eggs and protein have to be on the bottom shelf anyway, so just clearly label them and you'll be okay.
One of the things I always like to do, you've got your lab plan, which lists everything out by the minute or whatever, and a lot of that is definitely very beneficial for you to have that, but that's more part for Chef Brewer and the judges to go by. For me, I found it easier to try not to forget anything, is to just have a separate checklist that was usually, try to keep it to no more than a page, because with the lab plan, it can be anywhere from 3 to 5 pages, and when you're flipping through, and sometimes you'll start something here, and then next thing you know, you're on the second page, but then you gotta flip back to see what am I still waiting for? Having that one checklist with everything helped me overall. Like I said, some stuff I knew was coming up at the end that I just hadn't got to it yet, but it helped me not forget any key components because I had that checklist that was easy accessible without having to scan through multiple documents. Because then you've also got your recipe book that's 30 pages long.
Yeah, I did that too. Also at the end of every prep day, like start your week off, you should write out prep lists depending on what you would like to accomplish every day. And at the end of every day, or and I do this in my day-to-day life too, when you get to the last, like, you know that you need 30 minutes to clean up and you're in the last hour of the day, you're like, what is not going to happen today and what needs to happen tomorrow? Where can I compensate for lost time? Or if you absolutely crush your prep list, can you move something over and knock out your cracker that will hold? And doing that up to the day of Capstone, that is how I got my list of things and components. I had my prep list to do, and I had my before, if service is at 5, I had my before 4 o'clock list. I had my during 4 to 5 hour list, and then I had my service list. So I could throw those pieces of paper away. So when I got to service, I had my one list with every dish, all of my components listed, and then like ideally my timeline for service. And then I was in communication with, you know, my serving chef partner, and they were letting me know how my table was doing.
Do we feel better now or worse?
A little worse.
Okay.
Overwhelmed at this point. Did any of you guys have a middle station? Alright, so how, there's nowhere to put a speed rack. How do you keep up with like your tools organized?
Well, I had a speed rack, but it was on the end, either in between the two cook areas. That's where I kept mine because it was, that way I didn't have to worry about blocking the access where the 3-door reach-in was, since that was the other side. So you just have to move a little bit quicker and just being more strategic of what you put on there versus what you're keeping on the line. And again, I probably had tools on my speed rack that I ended up not using, but I thought I needed without a doubt. But at the end of the day, I didn't use it, and because it was on my speed rack, at times it would slow me down because I had to move stuff around because I had too much. Again, you're not trying to create something new, you're just showcasing the fundamentals, so don't have any more equipment than you absolutely need to.
Even with keeping tools on your station, I had these little rectangle knife bins, and I put knives in one bin, my forks and everything else I needed in the other bin, and had that kind of in the station. And you kind of work those middle stations, you can pull that refrigerator all the way out and use that as extra prep space if needed. Don't tell Chef Schneider I told you that.
What you just did.
Yeah, because I mean, you can pull the extension cord all the way down, and you can pull the thing out and really plug it in that way to keep the reach-in usable. Luckily, he was out on the floor that day in the dining room, so I didn't have to worry about him seeing me do that.
Okay.
But if you have to make space and you need to use everything around you to create space, talk to your partners that you're on the station with, and a lot of times they'll even be a little bit willing to either use a little bit less space or be like, yeah, you can use this storage space of mine. Just, again, label your stuff with your name clearly and what it's for, and you'll be good.
Which station do you have? Do you have the French top or the middle 6-burner? Are you on the right or left when you walk in the kitchen?
When I walk in, I'm on the right side next to the big 3-door.
Do you have are you using the French top? to cook
No.
on? Okay. Yeah, because I had the French top, and that was problematic for me because all the other stations have shelves above them, and I didn't have that, so that was space I lost. And some of I think one of my sauces ended up overcooking because I kept it as far off the heat as I could, but it was still on there, and that's a little bit harder to control the heat on the French top. So if anybody does have that French top, just be aware of that. Maybe a good thing, like those shells where you got the legs that go up and cross, that would be a good investment, because like I said, everybody else has that extra space where they can put their pans up top, and that French top doesn't have it. And it's not like you, with the 6 top burner, you don't have the heat on, so you can set something there. You can't do that on the French top, because the whole thing's gonna be hot the whole time. Some parts hotter than the other, but you can always have heat, and that can mess up your dish.
I cooked on the French top too, and I ran into that issue of like thinking something was far enough off. It certainly wasn't, and like I kind of crisped the bottom of my barley for a dish, but you're able to like kind of figure it out and hopefully save things. But just being really aware of the equipment that you are given in your space is really important. And when you are in the middle station and on any station, talk to your people beside you. What equipment are you gonna need at what time? Do you both need Vitamix? Do you both need a Roboku? Because you could set one up right in the middle, so it's taking up 2 inches at each side of your station, instead of getting 3 out, then nobody has a bowl or a blade, and then nobody has a bottom. And so talk to your people and try to be like, hey, on Tuesday, is everyone making their stock, or is everyone making consommé right now? So get that equipment out like together almost. If you can work with your side partners like that, that helps save space too.
And I know both my partners, the people that were beside me, they let me use their regular burner tops for different stuff, either as a place to store my pot, but that's not always a guarantee that that space is going to be open.
Yeah.
If that space is not open, I did remember watching Chef Snyder at one point put a inverted sheet pan down and then putting your pan on top of that, because it's
what
for Lisa.
too.
Mitchell, you have a question?
With the French top, how did y'all deal with your consomme? Because that's the biggest thing I struggled with.
When I did my consommé, it was, I can't remember if I did it earlier the day before. I definitely did it early in the day, but I used one of the side 6 top burners and did my consommé there, because the person that had that station didn't need all 6 burners at one time.
I also did mine the day before and then like laid it out so all the fat came to the top and I skimmed it. And I also did mine on a 6 top burner, and I did not use the French top. It's very stressful to make your consommé the day of, and the French top is just so hard to gauge the temperature that if you walk away and it boils and you're done.
Yeah.
So do you recommend doing it the day before?
If you have time, I would do it the day before.
Do it early. I did mine 2 days before, and the next day it was cloudy, but that gave me time to freeze it, and Chef Brewer showed me to put a perforated pan and cheesecloth down and let it strain through there, and it'll instantly clear it back up.
Yeah, I made mine one day before, put it in the fridge, and then the next morning you can like skim all the fat off the top, and then you just need to warm it up, and then it's good to go. Pour it in the little things to keep it warm.
I was asking like super nitpicky stuff now. Like when you're plating, can you get like, do you have like, what's the fucking called? Heat lamp,
Yeah.
and like, do you like grab like, do you put down linens when you
Yeah.
plate?
Yeah, because you need to keep that plate hot for a good amount of time, just so when it gets to your table, it's still hot for them, and when it gets to the floor judge, it's still hot for them as well.
And like, what kind of, for warming your plates up, like, did everyone on the line, did you guys like, let's have one low oven, one hot oven, or how did you?
So during my year, we didn't do that. Everyone was using their oven fully, so I personally put mine in the salamander for about 15 seconds and then took it out. It's hot as all get up, so just be wary of that, but once it's under the heat lamp, it's gonna transfer that heat and it'll be about where you need it for plating.
My, go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
You're good.
I do remember the chefs like last your capstone, they set up all the heat lamps for everyone. Like it was something that I think the chefs like collaboratively like wanted to help each student set up for service, so.
Yeah, in my year, you can get your own blue towels and like I put those down and stuff for plating just to keep the heat off the table and onto the plates. But they set up the heat lamps for you, and then we used what is this thing called? It's like a big steamer cabinet.
Oh yeah, Russian.
Yeah, we used that to warm all of our plates.
The proof box?
Yeah, no, the
the
rationale
rationale.
down there,
They're also
and we
on
turned
the
that.
box on the other end.
Yeah, so that whole side of the kitchen, we used that, but we had like to label our plates and make sure everybody knew what plates was theirs, and when the plate debacle happens, and you just gotta be ready and prepared. But when you decide on like a team plate warming system, know the things that could come with that. And I took my high school classes here at AV Tech, so I was able to take all the prerequisites for the culinary program and the hospitality management program while I was in high school. So it's something I've been like wanting to do probably since I could talk. And it always feels so cool when I'm at an event and I'm running one by myself and I go and I send out 50 or 60 plates in 15 minutes, and then I go, I just did that, and I'm a chef, and that's wild to think about, that I'm serving a menu that I wrote, recipes that I created, clients that I've talked to from the start to the end of the process, and it's really amazing to reflect on the experience of Capstone and how I almost do that 2 or 3 times a week now in my day-to-day career, you know, and that is so cool. Right immediately after Capstone, I think my entire class, we walked into the dining room and we all fell on the floor. And we all laid in the floor probably for like 10 minutes or so, and we had all the chefs come and talk to us and tell us how great we did, and then I don't even know what we did. I don't know if we all went home, I don't know if we went out. It was a blur after that. I was so tired and so happy to be done. But
Best recommendation, if you can't get more days off during the week, at least try to get Friday off so you can rest. Just saying, it's a blessing.
Yeah.
But Capstone is literally one of the most challenging, fun things you can do in the school. It's one of the biggest tests, not for your chef or anybody else, but for you.
Yeah.
It's literally like a little personal growth of, wow, I went from here to here type things, and I think that's why I enjoyed it, because it was enough to keep me like going